Okay, here's another little thing I've made is a stir plate. So I used a computer fan. Just mounted it in one of these project boxes from Dick Smith's. So it's a computer fan with a washer glued in on the center and 2 rare earth magnets. So, and then that goes to a switch and a speed controller, and then it just goes to a little phone charger. Yeah. So I plug it in. That's how it works. So you can control the speed with this. Not much power, but there's enough to turn it off there. There was a light on there, but that's gone. I'll just put it back together and show you how it works. So there, obviously you've got to muck around with it to get the height. So it's just underneath there, so it's just enough to spin the magnetic bar in the flask. I'll just put these back. So what I would do, so I've tried some different stir bars. About the middle size one works the best. So I drop that in. You can see it centers. If I just get some water, you should use yeast obviously and wort. As much in as you want. And make it clear. And turn that on. And there you go. And that, you leave that going for a couple of days till the yeast is done. Once you've made the starter, and that's a simple little stir plate. All cost about $5 or $10, if that. Okay, this is another thing I do to cool the beer or the wort after it's finished. I put it on manual and just turn the pump on, and I've got an immersion chiller, so that's in there, and that's bringing it. It's been on for a couple of minutes now, and it's brought it down from boiling down to 57. So that's coming from the tank, goes through the chiller, and then back up into the gutters and back to the tank. So it's just not wasting any water, and that brings it down pretty quick. It's not the biggest chiller, but that works a treat. So as you can see, it just comes down pretty quick. And then I've got some brew in there, so as soon as I turn that off, that'll drop nice and clear, ready to put in the fermenter. Okay, so once it's, I get it down to about 35 degrees with the immersion chiller, and then I will just, once that's all, you can't see it, but it's pretty clear, it's all dropped nice and bright, I will just run a little bit off into there, and then I just let it aerate itself as it drops into the fermenter, and then it'll go in the fridge, and within a couple of hours it'll be down to kitchen temperatures. And what I do is I store all my yeast, so that's the yeast I'm going to use. It's only a couple of days old. I'll tip that off and let that warm up, and by the time that'll go into the fridge then, and by the time that's ready, I'll just pitch that straight in there and she'll be away. So again, I use a little temperature controller mounted in one of those project boxes, like with the stir plate. The probe goes down into the fridge. It's not hooked up to the fridge is just running, because if I turn the fridge on low, it keeps it at lager temperatures anyway. So the probe goes down and it's just taped to the side, and I'll leave that there until it gets down to about 10 degrees, 12 degrees, and then I'll pitch the yeast. Okay, cleaning the Braumeister. So once I'm finished with it, it's pretty easy to clean. I'll show you what I do. So just unplug it. Left. Get a bit of a hose out. Yeah. Now I put just enough water in there to cover the elements, and I will put some, I'll take it back in the garage and get the water heating up. Okay, so go to manual. This is the cleaning procedure I use every time I brew. Turn the pump on and just get it up to about 40 degrees, 45 degrees. Turn the element on, and then I grab a little bit of caustic soda. Now I wouldn't let this soak in there for too long because the impeller is made of plastic, and I wouldn't imagine caustic soda would be too good for it, but it gets it very clean. So I just put about a tablespoon in there. Oh, a bit more then. And I'll let that heat up, and I'll give it a bit of a stir, and I'll show you how I clean her up. Okay, so once that's heated up a little bit, I always wear a glove. You don't want to mess around, obviously, with caustic soda in your skin. A little bit of a scrubby pad, and I just, nothing too drastic. Caustic soda really rips this material off. And then what I do is I wrap it around the element. Because the element, even though it's on, there's so much surface area, it doesn't actually get that hot to touch. So I just wrap that around, run it around the element, and then go down to the next level. Just run around, give it a bit of a scrub, and basically that's it. I'll go and drain that and give it a hose out, and I'll show you how I pull the pump apart. Okay, I've just rinsed that out. Now that is as bright as a new penny, and you wouldn't, that's done nearly 200 brews that, so a little bit of caustic soda works a treat. Now what I do is okay, so only finger tight, undo the locking ring, holds the pump on, and on the newer Braumeisters there's actually a speed control on the side. I'll leave that turned up pretty much to flat out, it's not important. Okay, so there's a little O-ring, that's, now the trick is to make sure the, that's the impeller, to make sure that those tiny little holes are clear of hops, because if they get blocked it makes it very hard to vent the pump. So that's pretty clean, and that's the pump. I just give this a bit of a wipe out, and I'll leave it in the sun to dry. Just wipe it all out, get any water out, any hops. That caustic soda pretty much rips everything out of it anyway, so it's nice and clean. And I'll just leave that in the sun to dry now for however long. And that's that. Now once that's dry, drop that back on, push the O-ring back in, just seat that so it's nice and flush, and put the locking ring back in, and just do it up finger tight. Doesn't need to be tight at all. And that's that. All I do now is give it a bit of a wipe out if I don't want to leave it out in the sun to dry, and it's ready to go for next time. I've had a few people ask me about my keg setup in the past. So what I've done is I've just bought a standard, it's a Fisher & Paykel chest freezer. Not sure what size it is, but okay, and what I've done is I've built this collar out of timber around the top, and I've just put a stainless steel plate on the front, mounted to the front, and I just screwed a little drip tray on there, and then I've remounted the lid onto the timber collar, and I've got a temperature controller, and the probe goes in through the back and just hangs down the middle of the freezer. So also what I've got hooked up is a little switch and another computer fan, so when the lid closes the fan goes on just to circulate air around the top of the freezer, keep the glasses cold. I used the John Guest fittings and they all work great. I've never had a problem with them, and as you can see, I just got a hole saw, drilled some holes through the collar and attached the Shelley taps to essentially to the stainless steel plate on the front. So when I keg, I take the fermented beer from the fridge, and I use about 2 teaspoons of gelatine, heated up, dissolved in hot water. Fill the keg, put the gas on, take all the other gas off, and then I will wind the gas right up to what do we see, to 3.5 bar, which is about 350 kPa, and I'll leave it there. So on the micromatic regulator, that's up to about there. I'll leave the gas hooked up for 24 hours and basically vent it back down to the way it is now, pretty much nothing, just enough to push the beer out, and that's perfectly kegged, perfectly carbonated. So that's my setup. Now another thing I wanted to show you on the Braumeister, on the top screen, the top filter, I've used this little piece of rubber to hold the screen. It makes a good seal between the malt pipe and the screen. So it's just, if you can see the profile there, it's just a little U-shaped piece of rubber. It goes around and just holds the stainless steel mesh onto the plate, and that fits tightly, a nice tight seal into the top of the Braumeister. Just a little bit of a push, and that's that. That works great. Very simple, very easy. There's a shop here in Australia called Clark Rubber, and they sell it by the metre. It's only a couple of dollars a metre. Very simple solution to sealing around the malt pipe, and I don't get a skerrick of grain over the malt pipe when I'm mashing.